Hey everybody, I'm Andrew, VP of Strategy here at Search Engine People.
And I'm Michael Johnson, an account director here at Search Engine People. And today this is our second podcast, and we are going to be talking on the subject of KPIs, or also known as key performance indicators.
Yeah, it's a big shift that's happening. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation going on around AI and how that's making life more efficient and more simple, but I think it's creating some complexities too, as we see more of a generative result being pulled in, and we see that SERP page changing. We go from 10 listings to 6 listings. We're moving maybe not towards a zero-click environment, but definitely towards a low-click environment. Suddenly traffic's far more difficult to come by. We have to reconcile that with accounts.
Absolutely. And I think like one of the most interesting things about sort of in terms of KPIs that we discuss with our clients is I think, you know, how you say like the goalposts have moved. They've changed.
Yeah.
So maybe like Andrew, you've been with the company for close to
13 years?
13 years. Okay, I was going to say 10. How has that changed for you when you're doing your reporting when you're strategizing with your clients?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. You know, I go back even further than the time that I've been here because I was actually a client for 6 years prior. So I've had a chance to be on
clients,
both sides
account
of that
manager, and now in sales.
Yeah, so a little bit of everything. You know, if we go back to maybe we often call it the Wild West days, we're really talking 2006 to 2013. Digital marketing was really just about showing up, right? So we want to rank number one and we want paid ads to appear, and there's little competition at this point. And if we accomplish those two things, we're going to have success as a business. And that's really the way every client saw it back then. There wasn't, to be honest with you, a whole lot of accountability. It was, I rank number one and my business is growing, therefore those two things are connected. And I think that's a logical stretch to make, to say, hey, when I rank number one, especially for a service-based business, you know, what I do and where I do it type business model, odds are I'm going to have more business. But really, there was no tracking and measurement of that. It's simply rankings improved and traffic going up. And
right.
I think, you know, you could say it better than I, because you work with a lot of our smaller businesses. I think there's still a few that are living in that world, right?
We'll call those vanity metrics. You know, sometimes people just, their main objective is we just want to see our name show up for our main keyword.
Yes.
And so when we deal with some of our clients, one of the things that we always want to talk about is what is the objective? And I think maybe what you're saying is back in the day, the objective is just show up. Yeah. I want to be seen. It has moved. It is, you know, with the introduction with more complex tools like Google Analytics, we're able to get a lot more, you know, granular data to determine how people got to our site.
Yeah, and I think part of that transition was really forced, to be honest with you, because if we go all the way back to 2013 and maybe even up to 2015, we go through the Penguin and Panda algorithmic update eras, and it really shakes up the industry, and ranking becomes far more difficult. You can't put inferior content out. It's just no longer an option. And everyone transitions more into, or I shouldn't say everyone, but most transition to this space of thought leadership. And now all these businesses are saying, okay, if we can't easily rank number one for our really most important keywords or bottom of funnel keywords, we want to start educating our prospective clients. We see blogging really take off, right? So blogging goes to another level, and we're just producing record amounts of content. This is most businesses, anyone really had an in-house digital marketing person or a larger marketing team in particular. And then we see a lot of the small businesses, owners are actually writing blog posts, and we're pushing out content, and traffic is going through the roof. And again, we're sort of making that correlation. So we're saying now we're ranking for lots of keywords. We see traffic going up and we see revenue going up. Therefore, those two things must be related, right? So again, logical leap, but maybe not as specific as we would like to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some of those key metrics and those KPIs that we were reporting on, can you name specifically some of the things that we actually would look at?
Yeah, so if we look at in that sort of thought leadership space, total keywords ranking suddenly became important.
Right.
So I'm not just ranking for one keyword, I'm ranking for hundreds of keywords. Impressions and clicks off of those keywords becomes very important. And now we start to have this conversation around short tail versus long tail keywords. So this short tail term, which is really bottom of funnel and arguably your better keyword, in my opinion, maybe only has 80 or 90 or 100 searches a month. But this somewhat closely related educational term has 2,000 searches a month.
Right.
So if we rank for that, we bring in a lot of traffic. And that works really well when we look at blowing up traffic. And as a proxy, we end up with more leads. And this is what sort of leads into this marketing automation push at that time and still continues today, because now we say we have lots of traffic. It's not necessarily bottom of funnel. What the heck are we going to do to convert these people, right? What's that next step? I see that across a number of different businesses. We see, case studies becoming more important, white papers becoming more important. I know you have clients that have case studies on their sites and still using that as a lead magnet, right?
For sure. And ultimately now, as we're moving into this sort of new era of how we're going to be reporting and how we report, some of those things aren't necessarily as important. So like you mentioned with the SMBs. So absolutely, when initially reporting, keyword rankings, it would be website traffic. We would even look at things like bounce rate, look at those little things. Has that improved? But ultimately, what the client really wants to know is it working?
Yeah.
And so how we shifted on the SMB style from previous reporting, you'd obviously have your conversions, right? What is a conversion? For most SMB clients, there's primarily two conversions when you get to a site. Let's just use a locksmith, for instance. I'm going to either submit a form to you on your site or I'm going to call you. And those were going to be sort of our two key performance indicators. How many of those calls, how many of those forms came in through organic traffic or whatever source that we were referring to, whether it be paid or direct. And that would be sort of our metric. But we never knew exactly at that point, the lead died. Like, we don't know what happened after that click. So we are now moving in more into a different world. And now we actually need to show clients what exactly is the return on ad spend. What is, and that's where our new KPIs are moving in 2025. And a little bit that we do about that is we have to know a lot more about our business. So our roles as marketing or digital marketing have gone far beyond just looking at, interpreting data from Google Analytics. We're becoming a little bit more of a marketer. We need to know things like, what is the lifetime value of your client? What is your conversion rate coming through? If they don't have particular tools set up, they need to know these, and we need to know these so that when we are reporting with our clients, the next step beyond just conversions is going to be, well, if you had 10 conversions and you convert 70% of the time and your lifetime value of that client is X amount, then we can make the calculations to the client. And that's usually what we lead in with. And then the rest of the data can be all of those factors that lead up to that click. Would that be the same with your enterprise clients?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think where it's interesting in this case is the general perception is often that the small businesses are sort of laggards, right? So they wait and they see what everyone else is doing and then they follow suit. I don't think that's the case here, because I've seen these conversations taking place for the last year or two where the focus has really shifted away from metrics like total leads, right? Total leads not quite as important.
Right.
Sales qualified leads and actual closed won business and revenues become more important. I see those small businesses shifting towards adopting CRMs so they can actually get true effective measurement of all those metrics. That's really a big one. On the enterprise side, we see a little bit of a mix. Okay, so on the B2B side of things, especially B2B software and technology, they're the brands that you want to watch to see what they're doing, because they've really found this good combination of thought leadership plus accountable marketing. They're going to educate you, they're going to give you downloadable assets and content, but they're also going to move you to the bottom of funnel, and they're going to definitively be able to report back to their leadership on how much revenue they influenced as a result of their efforts. A lot of the other enterprise brands are still really focused on thought leadership and traffic, and I think that's a big concern right now in this particular time. Again, as we get more of that generative AI result coming in and we go more to a low click and who knows, maybe eventually zero click environment, we can really forecast what's going to happen, maybe this year for a lot of those marketers and possibly next year. And that's a little bit of pain, because when your KPIs are really traffic and total lead driven, and your traffic goes down by 40% and your leads go down by 20, 25%, you're in a world of pain. Now, the reality is, for a lot of those brands, your qualified leads may actually go up and your revenue may go up, and you really need to look inward and say, was the work we were doing worthwhile? If our leads go up, our quality leads, I should say, go up, and our revenue goes up, even though our total leads go down and our traffic goes down, were we really ever writing the right content to begin with?
Right. And I think what you're referring to in terms of traffic just going down, it just didn't go out of thin air. There were some changes made in the search engine result pages that obviously led to this. We discussed this in the previous podcast with the introduction of the AI overview, which was launched in late last year. So a lot of our clients, especially these big enterprise clients, they viewed their website traffic as being a huge contributor to their brand.
Yes.
It is gone 50, 60% in some cases. But like you said, the lead quality has stayed the same. Now, why do you contribute that to? Because in our previous cases, we were saying potentially that lead, the traffic that was coming in from those other sources weren't the best converting type of traffic.
Yeah, so highly educational, and I think that's a noble endeavor, right? So as a brand, if we're going to educate our prospective clients, I'd be hard-pressed to say that's a bad thing to do, right? If we're going to look at the connection of how many of those people actually become paying customers, it's probably a lot lower than we'd really like it to be. Where we see a lot of those paying customers coming from are more bottom-of-funnel terms. Paid's done a lot of heavy lifting for a lot of these brands. So while their organic traffic explodes, goes through the roof, while the case study downloads and white paper downloads and webinar joins go through the roof, the real heavy lifting was done at the bottom of the funnel as far as revenue goes. So if I was asked, do I think we should stop doing that? No, absolutely not. It's a smart thing to do as a brand to be a thought leader and to be educational. But should we give it as much credit as we've wanted to give it over the last couple of years? Probably not. We should give a lot more credit to revenue where it belongs, and that's where tracking comes in. We just talked about CRMs for small businesses. You've kind of led the charge. It's
been a game changer. So yeah, like as we were talking, like back in the day, it would be how many phone calls, how many form submissions came in. Fantastic, and then we got a little bit more further down the funnel. Okay, we talked about how many of those converted. What is the lifetime value? Now we're moving into something even more down the funnel, and that is adopting a CRM. So it is 2025. And if your small business or business at all does not have a CRM, you're living in the Stone Age.
Yes.
And the reason why we say that is because what a CRM can essentially do, it can talk to different platforms. It can obviously, it's a major contributor to organization of leads within the company itself. But as a marketer, we see it as one of our biggest tools because we can actually connect that to, let's just say, a paid platform like Google Ads.
Yes.
And what happens is when a lead comes in through Google and comes into a CRM, it's connected to what we call like a Google Click identification, a GCLID. And what that GCLID is basically, it's data that supports what keyword, what time, the user, everything that we would need to understand who that user is. If that user came in off a particular keyword and ultimately made it into just a cold lead into a client or a sale, that information is then relayed back to Google. And we're basically telling Google, hey, try to find us more people like Andrew who just converted off of this one particular keyword. Absolute game changer in our industry. Less wasted clicks. And now when we talk to our clients, we're actually saying this is definitively we know, and we're not guessing anymore. And that's the biggest change from what you were talking about early in the podcast.
I think internally we've talked about this a lot. Without that data, there's a lot of times when we're doing what appears to be exceptional work and we're patting ourselves on the back and we're saying, great job, team. But on the client side, they're inundated with leads and not necessarily sales. And the question becomes, what if we're getting leads that are looking for your service, but it's not necessarily the right lead? If you're the plumber who's really good at doing emergency service and you're getting lots of leads for people that want to do bathroom renovations and that's not really your bread and butter, sure, those look like good leads because there's someone searching for keywords that you've indicated are important. But when you're showing up and you're only winning 1 out of 10 of those, but you win 10 times out of 10 on the emergency side, the question always becomes, why are we even spending money or why are we putting any effort into this? And that's the missing piece without that data. Right? If we're relying on you to feed it back to us, it's too late. Right? We really need those connections to exist.
Yeah. And what a game changer it is. It saves money. When the phone rings, we're trying to get more qualified people on there. It saves them time. And all of these things is just essentially using machine learning and AI to help benefit everything that we're doing.
We've done this here ourselves. So we've run so many different campaigns, and we have a really good offline conversion set up where we can pull all that data together. And it's interesting to see, we've had singular conversions that are $1,500 or $2,000, and you would think, wow, that's really expensive, and why would we want that? And those have closed at a high rate, and they've ended up being very profitable. We've run campaigns with conversions at $75 and $100 per conversion, and keep in mind ours are typically more expensive because of how competitive the industry is. And we've really had salespeople here sort of beating their head against the wall, calling back and chasing down these inferior leads. If we didn't have the data and we didn't have the connection points, would it ever be tempting to continue to go after the $100 leads and keep the sales guys dialing for dollars and do all that sort of stuff? But in reality, it's a wasted effort. And we can definitively say that. We have data that backs it up. I think clients are really starting to adopt that at a higher rate. I think it's interesting that a lot of the enterprise brands are still a little bit behind there, and there's good reason for that. Sometimes they move slower because they're big industry. Sometimes they have proprietary technology and systems that don't integrate as well. And we see that being a little bit of a challenge, but that's something that we have to get through, because if we fast forward, if we say, what does life look like in 2026 and beyond, it is a revenue and ROI driven industry. We're going to see marketers shift away from traffic metrics and ranking metrics. And the simple question is going to be, if we spend X on SEO and paid or social, wherever we're investing that money, what are we going to get in return, and how predictable is that? And I know that's not the sexiest marketing term to say that we want our marketing to be predictable, but that's what these businesses are going to need. They need some assurance in this environment that if we're spending this money and it's not necessarily directly correlating to traffic, how are we going to ensure that it correlates to revenue?
Predictability is very important. I hear that in a lot of my meetings with my clients, and it allows them to budget, it allows them to do hiring if they need to. That is maybe the most comforting thing to some of these clients who have smaller budgets. If they understand what's going to be coming through the wire every single month, and it just allows them that freedom to sort of plan. And so I think that is a very important thing that you brought up in terms of that predictability. But also, if we know that it's working, and let's say we're using a paid account, we can turn up the dial.
Yes. More so now than ever.
Yeah.
It was more difficult in the past to just turn it up because there was all sorts of new learnings
didn't know
that had to take place. Now it's really easy, and it creates interesting conversations. Here with our own marketing efforts, when we're looking at things like trade shows, right? It's easy to say, okay, this trade show is going to cost $10,000 and our core audience goes there. But I can say for $10,000, I know exactly how many leads I'm going to get and exactly how much revenue I'm going to get. And now I have a benchmark.
Right.
To say, if we go to this trade show, we need to be able to accomplish A, B, and C. Otherwise, it was a colossal waste of time, and we could have spent that money elsewhere. It's going to be the same for any other clients. I'll give you an example from in the past. We had a client, they're in the financial services space. They're B2C, right? So they do accounting. And we're going back years ago. We have them ranking number 1 for all of their core keywords. They've gone from page 2 to literally top of page 1. We're running paid campaigns at the right keywords, with the right conversion values. And we look at it, traffic's up 60%, leads are up 40%. So it's a pretty astronomical result. And the client cancels. And the reason being is, well, I've been running some ads on the TTC, and I think that's what's doing the heavy lifting for me, even though we can definitively show that these efforts are leading to it. The problem is we don't have that CRM in connection to show the data through. And the belief amongst that particular client is, yes, sure, all these things are happening, but that's coincidental. It's something else that's driving value. Now, in this current environment with that data, we can say, yes, it was your TTC ads, or no, it was something else that was actually doing this.
And funny, we tested that out with another client too, in terms of how can we measure. I mean, we're going a little off, but in terms of how can we measure even things like that, just in terms of the capabilities that have gone over the years. I have a client who runs TTC ads right now, and we can actually measure it with a QR code. How many times people want QR code? Essentially a unique URL that we know that is only placed on those types of ads, and even the phone number. And you can't measure branding so much on those cases, but the amount of leads that came through those ads was very minimal, just on this small sample size potentially.
Yeah, which is nice to know. I think one of the ways we differentiate ourselves as an agency is we're not this agency that says digital is the only thing that's ever going to work for you. There's lots out there. I always laugh because we're the digital agency that sometimes advertises on the radio, which seems like a bizarre medium for us to go on, but it actually ties in really well to what we do on the digital side. The important thing is the tracking piece. Like you said, it's knowing whether it's working. Is it working better than something else? And then the back pocket ideas, you mentioned the idea of being able to scale up and scale down. That's what's nice to have in your back pocket. When we have all these systems in place and we have the right KPIs and we're more accountable with our marketing, we have these levers that we can pull. So if we're suddenly so busy that we don't want to take on too many more accounts, which happens, and that's an enviable position to be in, we can scale back ever so slightly. We actually did that over the summer, right? So we pulled back a little bit because we want to make sure we can service the accounts we have. We don't want to have so many that we can't service them. But then if we look what's happened over the last week or so, we've ramped it back up. So now we have room to do it, and everyone's suddenly very busy.
And that's that predictability, and which all of our clients can get. So if anyone's listening to this podcast and maybe thinking, well, I don't have these things in place.
Yeah.
In 2025, almost 2026, I think it's pretty safe to say that if you don't have a CRM right now, it's time to get one.
Yeah, and the price point has come down so much for CRMs. If we look at brands like HubSpot or Pipedrive, there's a number of them out there. You can go to places like Zoho. It can be very cheap. We could be talking $20, $30 a month. If you're spending even as little as $500 a month on paid ads, that will pay for itself several times over.
Yeah.
If you're spending significantly more, so if you're some of the clients spending $5, $10, $15, $100,000, there's an astronomical value in having that CRM in place. I would say it's mandatory. Well, in fact, I don't need to say it. You're doing that right now with your team. You're saying we can't effectively run your campaigns without this in place.
Exactly. And so now, we also deal with e-commerce clients, right?
Yes.
E-commerce clients are the dream client because we can, there's no fudging of numbers. This is what you spend and this is what your revenue is that we have reported in, whether it be Shopify or GA4 or whatever it may be. The goal is to treat get every one of our other clients, the lead generations, the form submissions, the phone calls, to act like an e-commerce client. And I think that's the stage that we're at now. And that comfort of being able to go into these meetings and literally being said, Mr. or Mrs. Client, this is what you're spending each month with us. This is what you're making. Is it working? Yes. Great. Can we do better? Of course. We can do this, and this. And ultimately, our job now as marketers is to have that ROAS number and let our business objectives and our targets be for that particular number. But we still need to look back at those previous steps that we can't ignore the things like sessions, the traffic and all those things. They all need to have sort of their minimum metrics, but ultimately it's the end metric that is the most important.
Yeah. So some of the things you talked about, those are the barometers of success, especially early in a project. Right. So these are the things that show us that success is on the horizon. Very rare, and I think very unrealistic and fairly unrealistic to think I'm going to start doing digital marketing or I'm going to start with an agency and overnight I'm going to have an influx of qualified leads, right? There's a lot of optimization that takes place, but things like sessions, traffic, ranking improvement are barometers for success.
For sure.
That's yet to come. With the CRM, we now have the data that we need. So that's step one of mandatory data. Step two is going to be differentiating between leads. And this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. The days of all leads are gone. Not all leads are created equal. If I come to your site through a blog post and I download a safety guide for some vehicle that you're selling and I leave, I'm not as valuable as somebody who books an appointment to come in and do a test drive. Right? It's just the plain cold hard truth, right? That's the reality. What it is, we need to differentiate. So that's sort of step two within the CRM. Clearly differentiate between what they are. Step three is going to be actually actioning information in the back end of the CRM. So when a lead comes through, was it qualified? Was it disqualified? We have an interesting one that we actually use here, and we call it discovery qualified. What it means is the sales team would like another lead like this one, but this one itself may not be qualified.
Okay.
So let's say you're a successful business and you have 50 employees and you come to us and you're in a known industry and it's one that we do really well with and we have lots of clients having success within the space, but you say, I haven't been able to convince the team yet that this is important. They still think that trade shows are better or traditional media is better. So they've given me a $100 a month budget. Right? There's not much we can do for you for that $100 a month budget.
Right.
In that case, our team would say, hey, that lead is one, I would like another one from this industry, similar size company, but this particular one maybe doesn't meet the qualification. So there's a lot of ways that we can slice and dice those leads in the back end. At the end of the day, as long as we're accurately showing which ones are valuable and how much revenue comes from them, we're going to be able to tie that information together.
It's awesome. It's totally awesome.
Yeah.
And being able to track that and report that back is just makes our job a lot easier too, right?
Yeah.
And just thinking about back about like so those steps is the CRMs, is having all your tracking in place. It's obviously building a brand. These things can be done for any level, like whether you're SMB, whether you're enterprise, whether you're B2B, and really it's a communication thing with the client too. It's not all us. We also need the client to work with that CRM. They're the ones actually pulling the lever and dictating which are good leads and which one aren't.
Yes, it's the adage of garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't give accurate data and accurate information, we mentioned earlier this idea of patting ourselves on the back, thinking we're doing exceptional work when we're really operating in the dark. If you're not accurately updating within the CRM, from our perspective, all appears to be good. We're driving the right leads in. You must be happy with them. We need you to take that next step. And then arguably take it further, right? So if we look at getting more advanced, we can move beyond cost per lead and initial revenue. And for some businesses, we can start talking about metrics like lifetime value. You talked about the e-commerce stores. There's a lot of e-commerce brands that would be happy to make $5 or $10 on that first order. There's some that'd be happy to break even and make $1 on the first order, because when they have a recurring business model where people come back and order regularly, we now get that lifetime value. That's where the CRM comes in. That's where I think a lot of the small businesses and even some of the enterprise brands missed out by not having that data integrated now, because they're saying I need to have a $100 or $20 or $2,000 cost per lead because here's how much revenue I make, but they weren't tying in the lifetime value. So they weren't saying that, hey, we have this client, we're an accounting firm and we have this client for 3 years, not for 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that changes the way we can pursue it. I always look back to years and years ago, our founder, Jeff Quip, he was having a call with the client. The client told us there is a lead cap, I believe it was $180. So we won't spend more than $180 per lead. And he said in the meeting, okay, so if we can get a $200 qualified lead, you don't want it. They said, well, no, actually, we would want that lead because it's qualified.
Right.
When we look at how we tie the metrics together, the more we know about how much revenue you actually generate from a client, initially average, but later actual true data, the more able we are to go out and find you the right leads. So maybe that keyword that's really expensive that we think is too costly is actually extremely profitable. Maybe you close 7 out of 10 of those leads, but only 3 out of 10 of the other lead.
And that kind of just sort of ties this whole thing in together. It's the transparency. It's us having that data to be able to make proper decisions based on the client's objectives.
Yes.
So all of this is made possible, and it's really changing the game ultimately.
100%. If we backtrack through it, we kind of went through the be seen
Yep.
era, then we go through the thought leadership era. Now I've been sort of dubbing this the era of accountability.
Yeah.
Now, so we need to be accountable in our marketing practices. And when I say accountable, I'm talking about accountable to revenue creation. If we're not generating more revenue, and even better yet, profitable revenue, then is it really worth our effort to take on this particular task or this particular action? I would say no. In most cases, it's not worth the effort if it doesn't lead to revenue. I think now what we're going to see is KPIs shift dramatically. And this is actually a great thing.
Totally.
So I think if we look more at the enterprise and even the B2B is kind of already there, but the B2B world that maybe some of them are a little bit behind, we're going to see marketing people with revenue targets and not with total lead targets.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned earlier, this is going to cost some pain, right? So there's going to be some bonuses that are tougher to hit in 2025 and 2026. That's just the way it's going to be. But what's really cool is marketers are incredibly smart people. and they've always worked through these different adaptations and changes that have happened in the industry. I think what we're going to see is just better marketing and more revenue being generated. And we're actually going to be able to see marketers getting the credit they deserve for the revenue that they create. So it's not just going to be our brand is strong or our sales team is strong. It's going to be marketers saying, look, I put this into market. I made this change. I generated this quality lead, and that lead's paying us $300,000 a year, or they bought that $1,500 item, whatever the case may be. And that's going to be a good thing. But short term, we might have a little bit of a bumpy road ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess sort of the final points is that if you're watching, if you're listening, if you're working with an agency who is still talking about KPIs, traffic and different things like that, and not really getting down to what your company is making, if your company is making money or not, it's maybe time to have a discussion with that company.
Yep.
It's maybe time to call us. It's what is the future, and it's time to kind of stop wasting your dollars on keywords or strategies that don't work, and really try to find who your client is, and then what keyword or what target or what strategy works for them, and then continue to hammer down on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So if you're watching, check out some of the other content that we've put together. Feel free to reach out to us at any point. We'd be happy to chat with you and talk about how we can take this to another level for you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.